Welcome to our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to receive the latest notifications. Today, I will introduce you to a true story about a disaster. The Death Listener. I can hear the calls from the other side. The Wind Through the Pines. Lana Grayson stood amidst the vast pine forest on the outskirts of Revelstoke, British Columbia, where towering trees reached toward the gray sky. The wind howled through, carrying the biting cold of the Canadian winter, weaving through the branches, creating a never-ending whisper. Lana pulled her wool coat tighter around her neck, her hands trembling, not entirely from the cold, but from an unsettling sensation creeping into her mind. Something was wrong. She could feel it, just as clearly as she could hear the wind singing through the deep woods. Revelstoke was a small town nestled at the foot of the Selkirk Mountains, where life moved at a slow, peaceful pace amidst the vast wilderness. Lana had moved here 3 years ago, leaving behind Vancouver in search of a quieter place, away from the city noise that always made her head throb. She worked at a small coffee shop called the Pine Brew in the town center, living alone in an old wooden cabin about half a kilometer from the forest. Her life was simple, almost mundane, until last night. It all started with a dream. In that dream, Lana found herself standing in the pine forest, just like she was now, but there was no wind, no sound, only a suffocating silence. Then she heard it, a whisper, indistinct, rising from beneath the ground. It was unlike anything she had ever heard before, deep, chilling, as if someone was trying to speak to her from a great distance. She woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. But the strangest thing was, the whisper hadn't disappeared. It lingered, hiding somewhere in the space around her, like an echo she couldn't shake off. This morning, while preparing coffee for customers at the shop, the whisper returned, clearer than before. It was no longer just an indistinct murmur. It was a voice, a woman's voice. "Lana, help me." She heard it, weak yet desperate. Lana dropped the coffee cup, the porcelain shattering on the floor. Jim, an old regular at the shop, gave her a concerned look. "You all right, Lana?" he asked. She just shook her head, muttered an apology, and rushed to the back to steady herself. Now, standing in the forest, Lana was determined to find the source of the voice. She didn't know why she had come here, but an unshakable instinct had pulled her out of her house after her shift, leading her deeper into the woods. The whisper was clearer than ever, as if it were coming from the very roots of the trees around her. "Lana, down here." The voice trembled. She knelt down, pressing her palm against the cold, hard soil with dry pine needles. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept through, blowing away the leaves in front of her, revealing a small sunken patch of earth, almost as if someone had hastily buried something. Lana's heart pounded harder. She hadn't brought a shovel, but instinct drove her to dig with her hands. The soil was freezing, clinging to her nails, but she didn't stop. She dug and dug until her fingertips scraped against something solid, a piece of fabric. Lana yanked at it, pulling up a mud-stained, moss-green scarf. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew this scarf. It belonged to Emily Carter, her best friend from high school, who had vanished without a trace 2 years ago. Emily had lived in Revelstoke, working for a local tourism company, until one day she simply didn't show up for work. The police searched everywhere, from Begbie Lake to the mountain trails, but found nothing. As time passed, the case faded into obscurity, and the townsfolk assumed Emily had run away or, worse, perished in the forest, never to be found. But now, Emily's scarf was in Lana's hands, and the voice whispered again, this time closer, as if it was coming from the scarf itself. "Lana, find me. I'm here." Lana dropped the scarf and stumbled back, her breath uneven. She wasn't crazy. She knew she wasn't. But what was happening? Why could she hear Emily's voice? And why had she dug in this exact spot? Pat traces beneath the earth. That night, Lana sat in her wooden cabin, Emily's scarf spread out on her kitchen table. She had brought it home, unable to leave it behind in the forest, yet too afraid to take it to the police. She feared they would think she was insane if she told them a supernatural voice had led her there. The dim yellow kitchen light cast eerie shadows on the scarf, highlighting patches of dried mud and dark stains Lana dared not identify. She poured herself a cup of hot tea, trying to steady her nerves, but her hands still trembled as she brought the cup to her lips. The whispers hadn't stopped. They came in waves, sometimes clear, sometimes distorted, like a radio signal lost in static. "Lana, down there. It's so cold." Emily's voice, unmistakable. Lana had heard that voice countless times, when they went skiing in the Revelstoke Mountains, when they sat by the Columbia River sharing their foolish teenage dreams. But now it was no longer warm. It was cold, pained. She got up and paced around the small living room. Outside, the pine forest stretched endlessly into the night, shrouded in darkness, with only a faint glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. Lana wondered, was Emily really down there, buried beneath the earth? But how could that be? If Emily were dead, why could she still hear her? And if she was alive, why had no one found her in the past 2 years? A sudden crack shattered the silence, a loud, splintering noise from behind her cabin. Lana jolted, the teacup slipping from her grasp, smashing onto the floor. She rushed to the back door, flinging it open, only to freeze in place at the sight before her. A massive pine tree near the fence had fallen, its roots torn from the ground, revealing a deep, gaping hole tangled with roots and dark soil. But what made her blood run cold wasn't the fallen tree. It was what lay beneath it. A single mud-stained women's boot. A boot identical to the pair Emily used to wear. Lana stepped outside, the cold biting through her thin sweater. She knelt beside the hole, picking up the boot. As she turned it over, a small crumpled note fell out, yellowed with age. She unfolded it under the beam of her flashlight. Emily's shaky handwriting stared back at her. "If someone finds this, please tell Lana I'm sorry. I didn't want to leave her behind." Lana felt her throat tighten. Emily knew she was going to die. She had left this message for her. But how? And why had it appeared now, right behind her cabin? The whisper came again, louder this time, closer. "Lana, keep digging. I'm here." She looked down into the hole where roots twisted like a monstrous web. Without thinking, she jumped in, using her hands and flashlight to claw at the soil. It was softer than she expected, almost as if someone had already dug there before. After nearly 10 minutes of frantic digging, her fingers scraped against something hard, a small wooden box caked in dirt. Lana yanked it free, her heart hammering. The box wasn't locked, but the lid was heavy, stuck as if sealed by time itself. She pried it open. A rush of icy air escaped, carrying the scent of damp earth and something decayed. Inside, beneath a silver heart-shaped locket, the one Lana had gifted Emily on her 20th birthday, lay something that made her stomach drop, a single, pale human finger bone. The unending whisper sat curled up on the sofa, the wooden box placed in front of her. It was 3 a.m, but she couldn't sleep. Emily's whispers were no longer sporadic. They were constant, like a haunting song with no end. "Lana, I'm cold. Help me." She didn't know what to do. Call the police? They would think she was insane if she showed up with a box of bones and claimed she could hear her friend's voice from beyond the grave. But if she did nothing, would the whispers ever stop? Or would they haunt her forever? She decided to do something she never thought she would: seek out Ruth, an elderly woman who lived at the edge of town near Echo Lake. Ruth was infamous in Revelstoke for her eerie tales. People said she could communicate with spirits, though most dismissed her as just an eccentric old woman. But Lana had no other choice. The next morning, she drove her old pickup truck to Ruth's house. The wooden cabin stood isolated by the lake, surrounded by bare maple trees. When Lana knocked, Ruth appeared, long silver hair draped over her shoulders, pale blue eyes piercing through her. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice raspy. "I heard it last night." Lana froze. "Heard what?" "The call," Ruth replied, leading Lana inside. "You brought something with you, didn't you? Something from the ground." Lana placed the wooden box on the table and recounted everything, from the dream, the whispers, to the cloth and the bone fragment. Ruth listened, her frail hands gently stroking the silver pendant around her neck. "This is not normal," she finally said. "Your friend Emily, she hasn't moved on. Her spirit is trapped, and she's calling out to you for release." "But why me?" Lana asked, her voice trembling. "I don't understand. If Emily is dead, why isn't she at peace?" Ruth gazed out the window at Echo Lake, her expression distant. "Some deaths are not simple, Lana. Some souls are held back by hatred, by a curse, or by a truth yet to be revealed. Emily is trying to tell you something. You must listen.